What's up, y'all? Welcome to a new episode of the Meadows and Makers podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd. I am known as Making Stuff in the Hive community and out on the old interwebs. Hope everybody had a really good weekend, great Mother's Day. Hope you got to go hang out with your mom or tell her that you love her in some way, send her a message or whatever. If you have a good relationship with your mom, or even if you don't, um, hope that you can appreciate, I guess, the gift of life. So, welcome to the show tonight. I have been working on some new things with the aquaponic system. Well, one new development is that we got some fish in the system. So I'm going to be talking about that at the beginning of the stream tonight and kind of giving you guys an update on what's going on with the Urbanite aquaponics system that I've been working on and some of the challenges that I'm running into with the system. We've been talking about how I'm probably gonna have some problems with algae, and lo and behold, I'm having problems with algae. So how about that? Um, I got a shade cloth up over the system, but just the bloom from like the algae has bloomed in there from I guess from feeding the fish and stuff, and it's kind of it's kind of bad. So I was there the other day after went fishing over the weekend and caught a few brim, also known as bluegills, and was able to take those just in a bucket from where I caught them at, and was able to rush them over to get them introduced into the aquaponics system. I had been taking readings of the water quality for several weeks and been waiting for the water to stabilize to where the point where this natural bacteria takes over, and it helps reduce the amount of ammonia in the water because that can be harmful for fish and screw up their gills and make it difficult for them to process oxygen in the water. So made sure all that was taken care of before introducing the fish, and then got the fish in there over the weekend. So was able to go out with a buddy of mine, and I think we probably caught some bluegill in about 15 minutes, or probably about 30 minutes. It didn't take very long. We used some fresh worms. We used some worms and used bobber, and was able to catch a few brim to throw in that system. Yeah, that's the thing about aquaponics is there is some chemistry involved in understanding what is happening with the chemistry in the system, and it's a little bit to figure out if you're brand new to it. But basically, once the system starts, and this bacteria gets established, then it's like pretty much set it and forget it. But until that happens, you kind of need to look at what's going on as far as like the ammonia levels and um, the pH of the water is something you need to look at. And then just starting off with good quality water is the big key. Is like you're either if you have no choice and you have to use tap water, you need to use some kind of reverse osmosis. But the best way to do it is to just collect rainwater and just use the rainwater. Uh, but some water municipalities, I found out, they actually use this stuff called chloramine, and instead of like it's just one that's more difficult to remove. Like I don't think that you can like set it out in the air and it doesn't. Like regular chlorine is just able to like dissipate if you just let the water sit, and the chlorine will off gas. But if they add these chloramines, I'm not sure if it's that simple. But we might dive into that a little bit tonight because I'm not entirely sure I'm accurate on that. It's just something I've heard and I haven't dug into deep enough. But yeah, we got some fish going in there, and everything's looking good as far as the health of the fish so far. They've got their feed on an automated timer so that it's feeding them like a couple times. The feed is set for a couple times a day. I might need to dial that back and maybe just feed like once a day, and that may be why I am having issues with the algae because I did talk to a guy at our company that I work for that he does aquariums a lot as a hobby and deals with this on a regular basis. So I had some issues that I was running into with algae in specifically, but he said one of the issues that might be causing that is if you're giving too much feed for your fish. So I might dial back their feed at like one time a day. And it's just a really simple battery operated little automatic feeder. And it's a super cheap one. And basically all it does is I think it's got like a little switch inside. And then when the switch is triggered, it just triggers the motor that causes the food to spill out to rotate a full 360 degrees, and then it stops again. So I'll show you what I have going as far as that goes. And then I want to share with you guys a video that Larken Rose put out recently. And if you're not familiar with Larken Rose, he wrote a really good book called The Most Dangerous Superstition that I highly recommend everybody go check out. It was the book that really put me and made me think about the way that I view view authority in the government. And he has a really good way to put that across to you in his writing, and to get you to realize that it's no different than a religious. Yeah, it's all kind of set up as a religion. It's a belief that you have that in people ruling and having the right to rule over you. That is, the crux of the issue for a lot of humanity. And so Larken recently put out a video declaring that he is the king, and I thought it was a really good video to get the point across on how you can start to view authority, and how governments claim authority over all of us, when it's simply just things written down on pieces of paper, and it's our belief that causes us to give it power, basically. So I want to share that video with you because I think it's a really good one. I think I'd like for folks in my audience to check it out and give it a listen. So I've got that planned for you tonight. And then there's a couple of events, one that's currently happening right now that I think I'd like to give a shout out for. And one is the Exit and Build Land Summit. It is going on from May 13th through the 18th. And there is a way that you can watch the replays virtually. I purchased the replays of the event in video format, so I'll be getting those after. I don't know. I haven't checked my email yet on that, but I guess I should be getting access to that later on. And my plan is to take it to some of the folks in our group and like have a watch party with it and do that kind of thing. So we can gain some of the knowledge that these guys are putting out. And then there's also another event that I just caught wind of that's happening here in June. It's going to be going on in Nashville, called Rebels for a Cause, and I'd like to talk about that event for a little bit. And that's going to be another cool event. If you can't attend in person, there's going to be a virtual access to the event as well. Um, so I think it's a good thing that if we want to see some change going on in the world, like to, attend some of these events so you can hook up with more like-minded folks. And if you can't attend, to support the events that are going on so that we can encourage, through our market actions that, we want more of these things to happen. We want more of these things to come about because I think it is so very important and so very crucial that we connect with each other, not just through this virtual space, but in real life as well, because it's there is a connection that you get between people in not better than just behind this computer screen, um, so. Uh, it's always a really cool thing when I've gone to some of these events in the past and gotten to network with some of the folks that really get it and they're really doing, real stuff to make their lives better and the folks that around them better as well. Um, so what's up, Mariano? And what's up, Rondon? Let me check. Let me check in who all else is over here. Yeah, what's up, guys? Good to see y'all. So I'll start off here and I'll show you a little bit of the fish that I put in there. I've got 3 bluegill in the aquaponics system right now, and this was one of the little guys, and we just went fishing one day. I just went over to the bait shop and I picked up some worms and rigged up a fishing rod and have to reline a bunch of these old fishing poles. So put some new line on and put myself a bobber and a small hook for these little bluegill on, and caught a few of them. Like I said, we caught like 3 or 4 in the span of like 30 minutes, and so that's all I really wanted to start with in the tank. So I was happy with the 3 that we caught and went ahead and rushed them over to get them in the tank. In this picture here, you can see that the aquarium tank is looking pretty green there, and then this is the fish that's staring back at us here is the biggest one that we caught, and then there are 2 more in there that they're pretty small, little juvenile fish. So this is one of the younger ones that was in there. I was able to get a nice close up shot, so that was the thumbnail for tonight's podcast. And then here is the end of the aquarium tank, and this was right before I went and cleaned the sides of the tank with a algae brush to get all that algae down from the sides, and it cleared up quite a bit. As the system works, it's able to pick up the crap that's kind of forming in the tank and being able to move it through some filter buckets and down through a media bed, so any of the junk that gets in the aquarium can get filtered out and used for other purposes, drained off the system for later use. So that is what I'm struggling with right now, is this algae bloom, and I have a shade cloth over the aquarium tank that I set up, but that's really not going to be enough. So I talked to the guy that works for the company that works for the company I work for, but he's up in the Nashville office, and he does this aquariums and like exotic fish and saltwater fish and stuff from uh, like all over the place, and he helps set up all these systems and everything. Um, so I asked him, what would he do about this algae issue, uh, and he gave me a solution, which was to buy something, and I think he gave me a couple solutions, but he said there's an additive that you can put in the water, but you're gonna have to keep fighting it, and you're gonna have to keep putting this additive in, and it's gonna kind of could mess with the balance in your system. And then another option is to go with this little thing, which is it's a UV pump, green water killer is what it's called on Amazon here. But basically, let me see if I can pull up this image here. It has it's like got an internal pump, and then it's got a UV light on the inside here, and then supposedly this UV light will help to mitigate the growth of the algae. Um, so so that's how it's supposed to work, and then the cost here on Amazon is like $35. So I figured it'd be worth a try. I know that there is probably ways that I could do this by introducing some kind of animal that goes in there and is able to help clean up the algae, but this is another way of handling it as well. So yeah, if I find maybe some kind of biological system that can help me with that issue, that I'll probably try that. Also going to put some sides over the aquarium tank to probably help out with that some more, because we talked about that on the past podcast, and Normock brought up the issue of the algae, and so one of the other guys at the Makerspace said he's got some of the material that they use for like these signs that they put out for like political campaigns and stuff like that, and was thinking that might be a pretty decent material to use as a cover over the aquarium tanks, and I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So he's going to bring some of that in this week so that I can try it out as a cover over the tank. So I'm going to attack the problem at a couple different angles with that, and then by getting one of these UV filters, and I'm going to see if I can find one locally at one of the pet stores locally, and give that a shot. So Mariano, you said I did a hydro on my aquarium with the generic motor. It give Greg simple as. So I'm not sure what you're trying to say there, but it sounds like you did something with your aquarium. Let's see. Normock, nice sawmill, brother. That looks like a wood miser, maybe. It looks like some serious business right there. Let's see. Mariano, you got sweet potatoes and your aquarium broke. Now you have no salad. Well, sweet potatoes is good. That's a good calorie crop. Let's see. Yeah, Normock, $5 spray can of black paint. Yes. Yeah, that would be another solution for sure. Just spray it all black. But then I can't see the fish. Damn it. So, let's see. You missed your aquarium. Ornamental aquarium. Okay, Mariano. Nice. The Timber King is the sawmill. Okay, cool. and you're looking at selling some of the boards that you're making. That's sweet. Um, I I really was thankful that one of the guys in our network had a sawmill. I was able to take some of the fallen trees back here and get them sawed into just some. Oh, I think he cut them down to like an inch or something like that, and just made some 1 inch boards that went the length of the logs, so that I could use them as like board and batten siding is my idea for them. So got a bunch of those in basically in slabs, just cut in slabs. They weren't, you know, dimensional at all, so I have to come back and kind of square them up. But he was able to do that for me for a pretty good price, for a really great price. It was like $150 to saw up a couple trees into that. Um, but but yeah, having access to one of those sawmills is a big deal. Let's see. Mariana said you made a lot of money with the aquarium. You sold plants. It was hilarious. Nice. All right. Let's see. See, Normock, spray 3 sides anyways. Yeah, I might think about that. Because then I could just, yeah, just spray the sides that I don't want to view the fish on. Yeah. And then don't have to, yeah, do some kind of elaborate cover or anything like that. Yeah, I dig it, man. I dig it. I dig that. So, yeah, that's the stuff I'm dealing with. And you know what? Originally, the tank was actually painted white on like one of the sides already from my buddy, and I'm sure he knew that issue. And he had already painted it, and I just went and took all the paint off when I brought it out there. Uh, so I should have just left it on there. But but yeah, figuring it out as I go along, as I like to do with a lot of things. Trying to figure out how I can make something work. Trying to turn trying to turn 5 cents into a dollar, but something like that. So let's see here. That is what I'm going through right now. I'm gonna try out this UV pump solution and putting the. I probably will paint the sides of the aquarium, and then use this other material to put it in there. So that looks like Mariana is like. What is this plant? Is this like some kind of succulent or something like that? I have a plant similar to this. I think sitting on the shelf over here. I can go grab it real quick. Uh, Here, let me give me 1 second. It's like this. It's like this little guy right here. Looks like they could be the same plant, but yeah, these things are pretty cool because like they're super easy to propagate. It seems because one of the stems fell off of this, and I was just able to directly put it into some other soil, and it just popped right back up. So let's check this out. I'll go full screen. Yeah, this little guy right here. I don't know. I don't know if it's the same plant, but yeah, this is how I bought it. It was just in this little pot, and it's grew like crazy. And then a couple of them I took off and put into another pot, and it just started to grow real well. So you can make money with those plants, huh? I guess so, because I bought it. So that's cool. Yeah, they're really neat. I get, and they'd be like a nice little house plant for you. Supposed to help with the air quality in your house, and then also supposed to help you relax uh, by seeing the greenery and stuff. I've got this avocado that's hanging out right beside me as well. This is this is an avocado tree that my buddy Robbie gave to me, and we've been growing it over here on the back porch, seeing if we can get raising avocado. We're gonna have to create a greenhouse for doing the some of the tropical stuff, but I've heard, and some of the folks, I think one of the folks that's in our group that is raising some tropical fruits and stuff at his place in a greenhouse. So yeah, depending on where you're at, what climate you're in. If you got a greenhouse, I think you could probably push one of your zones. So like if you're in like a more northern area, you can kind of push it to a different climate zone. And if you go like underground, you can do like some crazy stuff that I've seen, like these dudes doing sunken greenhouse. Oh, Mariano, you're saying people here think it attracts money. Oh, okay. Sweet. Bring on the money. Where that money at? Where'd all that money go? It's being printed into oblivion. But hey, we don't have to use that money. We can use other forms of money. You can use like crypto, liquor, weed, mushrooms, bullets. You know, just start taking any of those forms for money. Bullets would be great. Ammo has gone way up in price. So if somebody will do a trade for you on ammo, there you go. Just pay me in ammo. I'll take that deal. Goat's milk, beef, lamb, eggs, you know, whatever. That's all forms of money. So, all right. We got through that. That is the update on where I'm at with the aquaponics thing, and I will be bringing some plants over there. Well, putting some seeds in the system to get those started tomorrow, and then doing all those modifications on there. And we've got some plans in the future at the Makerspace. If there's one guy there that seems to have the electronics to pull this off, and I was talking to the folks at the Makerspace about setting up a live stream camera on the fish tank. Number one, it'll help me monitor how the fish are doing in the system, and then number two, it'll be kind of neat to be able to broadcast that out. And we're talking about trying to integrate something into it so that it can trigger an event, like if we can open it up to donations of some kind, that the donations will be set to an account that the Makerspace runs, and then they will be able to receive donations for the fish party or whatever maybe it'll trigger you to feed the fish in some way. But we can't overfeed the fish, so we got to figure that out. Or it triggers some kind of light show in the aquarium tank or something. I don't know. We're just talking about the idea right now, but for the first thing I think I want to try is just let's get this thing like set up on a camera and like let's just get a live stream started. And I'll probably just like test live stream to my YouTube channel. And then once we've got because I think we're going to try to do this with like a little Raspberry Pi computer. I think that's what we're talking about. Just a Raspberry Pi to host the stream. And then to pump the video feed into. And then through OBS, we'll just put out the stream and see if it works first and then move on from there. So, thinking about doing that, it'd be a cool way to like, promote the plans on this thing that Robbie came up with, and then kind of promote the makerspace and stuff like that. So, it's full hydro. Doesn't. Let's see, Mariano. Look at the baby. Full hydro doesn't air. This plant is a fighter. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, fully in water, you can just like pull it out and then just throw it in a jar of water and it just keeps on growing. Yeah, they're super cool, man. It's a super neat plant. It'll just keep on growing. And it don't get no fucks. I'd say it's probably the honey badger of succulents. Because it just don't give no fucks. So, I like it. I like it a lot. All right. So, I want to share this with the audience. Let me get this queued up for you guys. But this is the video that I was talking about from Larkin Rose, declaring his kinghood. And, well, let's just give this a listen because I think, some of the folks that listen to the podcast, that, maybe this will help you understand who I am a little bit better and how I think about certain things on a day-to-day basis is really influenced by the philosophy that Larkin is, well, just getting you to understand the system that we live in a little bit better. So, without further ado, let me play this by Larkin Rose. I Am Your King, entitled I Am Your King. Here we go.
Hey, Larkin Rose here, and I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is you are no longer beholden to the U.S. federal government. You no longer have any obligation to do what they say. The bad news, at least it's bad news from your perspective, is that I am now your rightful king. I am your rightful lord and master. Behold my stately robes and my royal crown. Now, I suspect some of you, being the nasty doubters you are, might not believe that I am your rightful king, despite my official declaration to that effect. So let's compare my declaration and my claim to things that you or others like you have believed in the past to see whether I have a valid claim to be your king. So when I declared that the U.S. government no longer has any right to rule you, you might have thought, well, who's this crazy guy to say that? Well, if you believe in the U.S. government at all, you have to believe in the legitimacy of the Declaration of Independence, which nullified the king's supposed right to rule the people here. Sorry, my crown is sort of annoying. So are these robes. So is this. For you to think that the U.S. is a valid country with a valid government, you have to think that it was legitimate to break free from England. Well, what does that mean? How did that happen? Well, that was done by way of the Declaration of Independence, which was some people just saying the king's not in charge of us anymore. And it wasn't very many people. They were claiming to speak on behalf of a few million people that were living in the colonies. They were British colonies at the time. And they just declared, we hold these truths to be self-evident, yada, yada, yada. And I forget how many people actually signed the thing. 30-something, maybe, people out of how many million? Well, okay, in this case, it's just one of me instead of 30 of them, but whoop-de-doo, what's the difference? They were claiming to speak on behalf of a huge number of people that had no say in the matter. And by the way, about a third of the people they claimed to speak on behalf of wanted to remain British colonies. And then another third wanted to not be British colonies. And then the final third basically were like, whatever. They didn't care. So this tiny group of people signed this document just declaring that the king's right to rule us, that's gone because we said so. Well, if they can do it, why can't I? The right of the U.S. government to govern you is gone because I said so. Now, if I wanted to, I could do what they did and write out a big list of complaints of all the nasty things the U.S. government's done. You could probably write out a pretty big list of complaints of nasty things the government has done. In fact, they're way worse than anything King George III ever did to the colonists, like by a mile. Way, way worse. So I could write them out, but I mean, is that what makes the difference? If I declare they're illegitimate, and those guys back then, or did they have like magic parchment? That declaration counted. That was legitimate because they used like a quill pen or something, and because it was on magic parchment. Or was it just some people saying, you're not the boss of us anymore, to King George? And then you and almost every American believes that made it so that King George was no longer the boss of them because that very tiny group of people said so. Okay, and there's not 30 of me, there's only one of me, but I'm declaring that the U.S. government no longer has any right to do anything. And I could list a bunch of complaints, but I won't even bother right now. Why is that not just as legitimate as the Declaration of Independence? In fact, the U.S. government is far worse than the king. So why isn't it more legitimate for me to say, I'm declaring independence from you, you don't have the right to do anything to me anymore? Or anybody else. I'm not even declaring it on my behalf, like the Declaration of Independence that said these colonies are now independent. So they claim to speak on behalf of everybody, including a whole bunch of people who didn't even agree with them. So I'm speaking on all of your behalf for the first step to declare they have no right to rule you. And for you to think they ever had the right to rule you requires you to think that the Declaration of Independence was valid and legitimate. Otherwise, we're still British colonies. But if you believe that's legitimate, why would you not believe it's legitimate when I do literally the exact same thing? Just saying they don't have the right to rule us. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Yes, so do I. And it applies to the U.S. crooks as much as it applied to King George. So why do you think the Declaration of Independence was actually legitimate and what I just said wasn't? There is no rational reason. But now we have to get to me being king, because that's probably something you believe even less. Well, if I declare myself king, you might say, well, who are you? You're just some guy. Have you looked at the Constitution? Do you know how many people signed the Constitution? 0. Do you know how many people are named in it as the people bringing it into effect? None. It says, we the people, which was insanely arrogant and completely untrue. Again, a very small group of people. This time it was a different group of people. The funny thing is, most of the small group of people who liked the Declaration of Independence recognized that the Constitution was going in the wrong direction. But that's another discussion. But you had a little group of people saying, we the people, in order to... And then they wrote a whole bunch of stuff just fabricating out of thin air the House and a Senate and a presidency and all these, and the judicial system and all this stuff by just writing it down and saying, well, this is the case. And if I did that and I say I'm king, you probably don't believe me. Why not? What is the difference? Is it because I didn't use big fancy words? Is that like if I go back and do it with big fancy words? Will you then think I'm your rightful king who you're morally obligated to obey? Or would you still just think, well, that's a silly thing to say and totally bogus? Go look at the Constitution. So many people study the Constitution and they're looking at the minutia and the detail about, oh, it structures it so the House and the Senate and this is subordinate to that and this is and there's checks and balances against the executive and the legislative and the judicial and blah, blah, blah. And they don't start from the beginning of like, what the hell? This is words on paper that some people wrote. And they just declare all power shall be vested. Who the hell are you to just declare this thing called Congress having power at all over anybody? It's insane. It is batshit loony to pretend that some people scribbling ink on a piece of paper actually created the right to rule, actually created legal authority. And almost every American believes that. Well, if you believe that, why don't you believe I'm your king? I said so. That's literally all they did. This body has power to do things because we said so. They didn't even say because we said so. It was implied. When they write things like, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes. It shall? How did that happen? Who said that? You didn't sign it. Did the ink itself make that power come into existence? Because the people who wrote it didn't even take credit for it. There's no name on it. There's no group saying, we the undersigned hereby declare, because that would seem even more insane. Either way, it's totally bonkers. All they did was do a really convoluted, complicated, ridiculous proclamation that they were fabricating out of thin air a group of people with the right to rule. And you believed it? You call their declarations law? Well, then why don't you believe me? When I did literally the same thing. That little line, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, that collection of ink on that old piece of parchment, that is the excuse for all federal taxation. The IRS harassing everybody, the ATF, the DEA, that most of these are tax agencies. All of it exists because of that tiny bit of scribble. And you think that makes it legitimate and legal and real? Ages ago, I did a video called I'm Allowed to Rob You, which was much like this, but just about the taxing clause. If I write down on a paper, I shall have power to lay and collect taxes, do you believe me? No. Some other human beings did exactly that. They wrote, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, and you believed them. Why? What possible reason do you have to think that some people, some unnamed people you didn't know who died a long ass time ago, they scribbled some ink onto a piece of parchment, and now that makes it legitimate that there's a gang of 100,000 parasites robbing 200 million people in this country of trillions of dollars. All of that is based on that tiny little ink scribble on that piece of parchment we call the Constitution. Who gives a shit? And if you believe them, why don't you believe me? I hereby declare I shall have power to lay and collect taxes. You each have to go to the description below and send me $5. Now, as it happens, I don't have an enforcement mechanism, so nothing's going to happen to you if you don't. But you're obligated to because I said so. And that's literally all they did to create the federal government. The Constitution, they just made it up. They just said this body is going to have these powers. And almost everybody in the country not only believes it, but hates anybody who doesn't believe it. And they take pride in paying tribute to and obeying the people who have supposed power only because of a scribbled piece of ink on a piece of parchment. Without that, there isn't anything. It all rests on that ridiculous assertion by nobody. This anonymous assertion from hundreds of years ago. So if you believe the U.S. government is legitimate, you have to believe that scribbles of ink on a piece of parchment fabricated out of thin air the right to rule. And you can say, well, it wasn't supposed to be ruling in very many ways, and it was supposed to not violate these rights. Who gives a crap? It's a piece of parchment just declare. It's like if I say I shall have the right to tax you, but only $5. Would that make it any more legitimate? Does that actually obligate you to give me money and give me the right to demand it of you? Because, well, I declared my sovereignty over you. I declared my right to rule. But don't worry, it was a limited right to rule. That makes it legitimate. No, it doesn't. And when I say it, I'm pretty sure every damn one of you recognizes that that's silly and ridiculous. Trouble is, when they said it in the Constitution, you revere it. And you think, well, that was legitimate and that created this great nation of ours. It created a ruling class, and it only created that because people imagined that this tiny group of anonymous people who didn't even put their name on it, scribbling ink on parchment, actually created legitimate authority, the right to rule. Just by going, well, they had meetings and they argued over the wording. Oh, okay. Well, I can bring in some people and we can argue over the wording of how I'm going to declare that I'm your king. Will that make it legitimate? Will that make it okay? No. Now, I hope some people have smoke coming out their ears at this point, because back when I was a constitutionalist and I believed in this great nation of ours and yada yada, and I thought nations were a legitimate thing, I thought countries were actually a legitimate thing, I thought law actually meant something, law as in legislation from government. I believed all that ridiculous mythology, and now when I look back on it, I just think, how did I ever think that added up? Again, I could obsess about the minutia of, well, this doesn't allow this, and you're not supposed to do this. But the minutia of what? The whole Constitution is just bullshit made out of whole cloth, literally. They just made it up, and they just declared, Congress shall have these powers, Article 1, Section 8. Says who? Who the hell are you to just proclaim that this group of political crooks over here has the right to interfere in the lives of these however many million people who had been colonists a couple decades earlier? Both of those steps, the Declaration of Independence and then later the Constitution, were people just declaring stuff. That's all. They didn't do a magic ritual and call upon the gods. They just said, we're saying that this is true. We're saying, King George, you're not the boss of us. That's what the Declaration of Independence was. The reason that was legitimate is because by basic morality, no king has the right to rule anybody. The Declaration of Independence didn't make that true. It didn't make it so that his authority stopped being authority. His authority was never authority, and the Declaration doesn't even recognize that. It sort of pretends that, well, up till now you had the right to rule us, but now we're saying you don't. And that part of the Declaration is just ridiculous. First of all, it's ridiculous to think that it ever had the right, the British Crown ever had the right to rule them. Second of all, it's insane and schizophrenic to say, you are my rightful Lord and King until I decide that you're not, and then you're not. That means you're not. If somebody's your rightful ruler, but only until you decide they're not, then they're not. That means your conscience outranks them. So most of the Declaration of Independence, I totally agree with, because it was people recognizing, you buttheads on the other side of the ocean, you don't get to tell us what to do. Cool. And that was just a statement of truth. You don't have authority over us. You don't have the right to do this to us. That was a description of a truth. And they mangled a few things because they still had statist thought processes. And then they talk about forming a new government, which will better... creating a new stupid ruling class to abuse us even more than the king ever did. Good job. So they still had their statist assumptions, but regarding that particular authoritarian regime, all they were saying was, you suck, you don't have the right to do this to us anymore, you're abusing us, we don't acknowledge your right to rule us. Okay, cool. And that declaration didn't change anything. It didn't make anything true that wasn't true before. It was just some people describing, you don't have the right to do this. This isn't okay. And then the Constitution was 180 degrees in the opposite direction. It was a different group of people, because people like Thomas Paine and Patrick Henry were like, that Constitution is going to be a disaster. It's going to be worse than a king. And they were totally right. But then there's a different group of people saying, we're creating this new union, this federal government. It's going to have these powers. They were just some people in a room saying that, like me in this room saying I'm your king. For you to believe them and not me is only because you have been indoctrinated and brainwashed into imagining that that particular group of people and that particular piece of parchment and those particular scribbles of ink were somehow what? Like superhuman and special and sacred. Yes, sacred, because it is a religious belief you were taught. And people don't think of it in terms like that because they think, well, politics and government and law, that's like rational ways to organize. No. You were indoctrinated and brainwashed into the insane religion that says a few people you don't know scribbling some ink on a piece of parchment a few hundred years ago actually made legitimate the giant evil monstrosity in DC with its tentacles all across, half a continent, that it has the right to be there and it has the right to do those things because of that ritual. And most people, and this included me back when I was a constitutionalist, they don't recognize how insane that is. They just accept it as, well, of course, the Constitution created the government, so let's nitpick a bit about the details. Let's not. Let's back up to the beginning and go, what the hell do you think makes it so that a few people in a room scribbling something can actually create into existence a group that has the right to rule you? To rob you, to control you, to quell insurrection, so that if while they're robbing you, you say, hey, we don't like this, they can call out the militia to kill you. Look it up. It's in the Constitution. And they had that power. Why? Because some people said they did. Okay, well then I say I'm your king. If you believe them, then you ought to believe me. Now, the difference is I'm not actually serious. I recognize how insane the claim is, and I would make fun of anybody dumb enough to believe me when I say that I'm their king. But to be consistent, that means I have to make fun of anybody dumb enough to believe that the U.S. government was ever legitimate, that the Constitution created any authority, that any constitution anywhere ever created a legitimate ruling class, because that's the basis of all of them. In any country, in any time span, it's either one doofus saying, I am your king, or a bunch of doofuses scribbling complicated stuff that the peasants don't understand and saying, we have hereby created this legislative body and we now yada, yada, yada. It's all weird, creepy religious ritual to make you bow down to mere mortals and imagine they have the right to rule. They don't. And if you can hopefully recognize that it's silly and stupid and illegitimate when I declare myself to be your king, I want you to think, see if you can get your brain to pierce through your years of indoctrination and assumption and realize every government in the world, every government in history was based on a claim just that stupid, just that ridiculous. And they got all of their power by the peasantry believing those ridiculous claims and believing that some group of people just asserting, we shall have the power to do this, meant they had the right to do it. That's the foundation of all government. And when people wake up one day and go, no, you don't. What do you mean you just, we shall have the power to lay and collect taxes? Screw you. I shall have the power to punch you in the face when you try to. What's this just making shit up? That's not how morality works. That's not how reality works. And yet, you have to believe that some people making that up, that was legitimate for you to believe in government at all, or the Constitution, or law, as in legislation from a governing body. To believe any of that, you have to start with an utterly insane claim which is a bunch of people saying we have the right to rule you. Oh, we'll only do it in these special, weird, limited ways, but we still have the right to rule you because we said so. All right, well, for all those of you who still want to believe that shit, then I'm your king. They're not anymore because I said so, just like the Declaration of Independence. And I am now your king because I said so, just like the Constitution. So the Constitution doesn't matter anymore because I just said it doesn't. And I'm now your king because I said so. So send me a bunch of money. And mostly I'll leave you alone. I'm a benevolent dictator. How can you justify laughing at my claim, which you should, and not laughing at the Constitution? And if that makes you feel awkward and uncomfortable, it's precisely because religious indoctrination is designed to make you unable to rationally examine the foundation of the entire belief system. Because when you do, it crumbles and it evaporates, and you'll realize political authority was never a real thing. It was just some people pretending they had the right to rule a bunch of others, and those bunch of others believing them. When that belief finally goes, when humanity outgrows the insane superstition of authority, so does all authoritarian power, so do all governments. Then we can start acting like grown-ups who don't believe such utterly ridiculous things and don't bow down to insane psychopaths just because somebody said at some point they have the right to rule. So let me be clear. I'm not your rightful Lord and Master, and neither are they.
All right. Well, that was the video there that I wanted to share with you guys, and I saw that there was some you guys were talking in the chat room there, and you brought up some interesting. You guys brought up some interesting points. Let's see, Mariano, you're saying the Constitution was written by Masons. Enough said. Luciferian Masons, all part of the master plan. Wake up. Yeah, you know what? A lot of them were Masons, from what I understand. And the whole DC area has got some interesting symbolisms and stuff to it. And, you know, you have the obelisk in DC. Apparently, it's like in the center of Avesca Pisces, which is like the birthing canal. Supposed to represent like the birthing canal. You know, a lot of symbology things going on in there. And then, you know, if you look into the founding of the country as well, when they did go to write the Constitution, the folks that were attending the Constitutional Convention, they were showing up from the other parts of what they had going was a confederation of the colonies, of the original colonies from Britain. And a lot of the folks walked out of the convention because they didn't like what was happening. They didn't like that they were working towards creating a centralized government, and that they believed the point that they were meeting for was to amend the Articles of Confederation to come up with a better way to work together in the in the different colonies at the time. So even at the founding of the country, you know, there was some, you know, not everybody agreed that was the right way to go moving forward, was create this centralized government. And so let's see. Rondon, you're saying Larkin misses the point like usual. And I'll like to dig into that a little bit. Let's see, Mariano, 2023, still believing in the Constitution, embarrassing. Let's see, Rondon, you're saying Larkin will never tear down the power structures he opposes without understanding the root. He's been at this far too long to be this obtuse. Yeah, you know what, for me, after, you know, reading his book, it's like the belief system, our belief in some folks have the authority to rule over us and demand things from us. That's like the crux of the issue. And I think in this video, but I think you guys are talking more about the as well. I think is the whole issue of violence, and then groups coming together to do some type of violence is what secures their power, basically. So I think that might be where you guys are getting at, but I don't think he addressed that in this talk. But he has made some videos, and one I saw recently, basically talking about like how if you won't go take your gun to, I mean, this is on the issue of taxation, but if you wouldn't go and rob from your neighbor to get money for this person that needs help over here, then what justifies you abdicating that to some governmental power to do that for the good of everyone, basically, right? So he has talked about that, but maybe not put everything together like you guys are saying, like a group that is willing to use violence can attain power, basically. Power over others, because just through their sheer their sheer ability to use violence, or willingness to use violence against others, is what truly cements some kind of power or rule over humans. Let's see. Mariano, monarchy was better. Theocracy is top tier. I think self-rule is the way to go. It's like every time we look to these external sources other than what we can do to take charge of our own lives, we're advocating that responsibility off to someone else, whether it be some religious figure, or some type of leader figure. Like, everybody's looking for a leader now. It's like, will Trump save us? Will Elon save us? Will somebody come and save us? Because this world is so crazy. It's just crazy all the time. How can we make sense of the world? We need somebody to help us, tell us how to live, how to go, how to fix things, what to do. It's like we're looking at all the problems in the world, and it's like so overwhelming that everybody's looking for somebody to be a leader, to step up to the plate, when, really that leadership has to come from within, in my opinion, and it has to come from all, every person has to figure out how to live in this world and not only survive but thrive on this planet. And this planet was set up so that we can thrive as people. But it is my belief that it is like this system of scarcity that we grow up into, that places all this idea of scarcity on us, when in fact the earth is generative and abundant. But yeah, we all need money to live and operate within the system that was, that exists right now. We exist in this system that uses that, so that we have to figure out a way to live within it and, make our lives better, but still figure out a way to survive in this system. So let me scroll down and keep reading what you guys wrote here, if I can pull this up. And Normock brings up a good point here. The problem with individualism is it has very little power to impose violence. Now, I've heard of some folks talking about this on one of the recent podcasts I was listening to, is that the folks that are on the left and have the kind of the radical leftist ideologies, like we would call them the woke now, I guess, because I guess maybe the old school lefties were against war and against corporations and things like that. But now the new, what do you, I guess you call them, the wokies or the new left or the NPCs, all these guys, the SJWs, whatever you want to call them. They're pretty good at actually, because of the collective mentality. They operate as units pretty well, whereas the folks that are outside of that mentality, that are individualists, that maybe it's hard for folks that are more individualists to become cohesive and act in groups. And so, it might be it's more difficult for individualists to like unify and take like group action, as opposed to the collectivists. And so, I mean, especially if you hold, morality, that, doing violence against others is wrong, it's like, and, it's only justified, when it's acting in your defense. But I mean, to what end are we living in a dystopian, sci-fi that, the rules are all thrown out the window. Just like, if you believe in the Constitution, that those are, supposed to be the writings that we're supposed to abide by, that none of those things are obeyed anyway, because the manipulation of language can do all kinds of things, and then the power of the mob that they get to, on their side towards certain ideologies or whatever. So. And then, you have the right and left paradigm that people get, we continuously fight with each other, because you're not on the right team. So, let's see, Mariano, individualism turns onto anarchy. I believe I live that. It's a guaranteed war. And Normock, I actually like Larkin, but he's kind of unrealistic, is what Normock is saying. Let's see, a little vague in response to one of Rondon's things. Mariana, USA is the headquarters of Israel. I like that. It's like the state of Israel. That was something that I wanted to maybe dive into a little bit, but basically, from one of the recent Grand Theft World podcasts, I was learning a little bit more about the formation of the state of Israel. Was between, I guess, the maybe the queen or the king at the time, and the Rothschild banker, that they like just kind of made this agreement that so like after the British lost to the folks during the Revolutionary War, that they were busy doing other stuff around the world, and so I guess the whole formation, like the Balfour, this comes from like the Balfour Declaration, which was like just two guys responding to each other, which was like the royalty at the time, and then one of the members of the Rothschild family, which created the state of Israel. So it's like all, each one of these, large empires, the U.S. and the U.K. have, you would think we would be like pretty bitter enemies, because instead of great allies, but yet you see U.S. and the U.K. working in concert on so many things, and that goes back to like Cecil Rhodes and this whole Anglo-American union that him working towards that legacy, described in the Carol Quigley's book, Tragedy and Hope. So yeah, a lot of these plans go way back, and if you start digging into it, you can see, where a lot of where you can start making some of the connections and things. Let's see, Ron Don, the belief is rooted in the power of force. He doesn't address that. Let's see. Which, yeah, I think I think I talked about there for a minute. It's like, yeah, the use of force is the I guess is the ultimate, like the guys that wanted to ultimately separate themselves from the British Empire had to pick up, weaponry to be able to assert that and get people to back off. So I mean, it's like that ultimately is how folks assert their own, liberation, basically. And maybe that's how it'll have to go down, but I think that my hope is that there's more of a renaissance in thought, but that might be too idealistic. Is to think that everybody's just going to adopt the principles of voluntarism and leave each other, kind of live and let live, do no harm but take no shit. But that might not be the case. But I feel like there's going to be something that steps into the power vacuum if the system does collapse in some way. So the question is, like, how do we want to move forward? In my mind, the best, violence does beget more violence, and so that's really not the solution. It's got to be through, a philosophical change, a change of people's hearts and minds. But I see where you guys are coming from. I see what you're saying, because I've wrestled with that a lot myself. But I think that is kind of a it's the wrong road to go down, is to resort to violence. But I believe that violence is justified in defense, so that, it is interesting. It's like, we're being massively attacked at a lot of angles. And, you look at some of the things that happen in history. One of the more recent events where it was called the Battle of Athens, Tennessee. If you want to go look that up, I'll actually look it up right here. But I need to remember that in order to not get my pee-pee slapped on YouTube, that I need to cut the stream from YouTube. So let me do that real quick. And I lost my freaking cursor. I love it when that happens. Let's see. Come on, cursor.